Good evening, and welcome to my humble abode. Um, I want to share some thoughts on human co- cog- cognition and cognizance and how we perceive the world around us. I think it's very interesting to kind of examine that a little bit. So, here we're going to start with something that hopefully people can recognize. This is a triangle, right? And next to it, I'm going to draw a human head. Hold on, I don't know if this is, might be tough to see this pencil. This is better. Can I use one of these? Okay. So, here's a triangle. And here is the human head. So the human head has an eye on it, and it can see the triangle, right? The triangle is just part of the world around it. And this particular part of the world around it sends a signal. So in the abstract, there's just this context, this world that any human being is part of, and things within this world provide signals to the human's head. These signals can be through any of the senses, through eyesight, through hearing, through feeling, because we have a body and things that, signals that perturb the body in any way end up also getting processed and felt by the brain. So basically, what happens after a signal is received is you kind of try to make sense of that signal. It's just a bunch of like scattered things, right? And in your mind, you start to, based on how you've grown up and hope if you have a healthy functioning mind, you can start making sense of the signal that actually you're looking at a triangle. And this happens automatically. And it's very obvious. Okay, like when I see something, when I see a triangle, yeah, okay, I know it's a triangle. Everyone should know that. That's not that big of a deal. But suppose that you're staring at something very complicated, right? Or experiencing something very complicated. Again, dividing reality into two things, right? The environment and the self, right? If you're experiencing something that's very complicated, it might be sending all kinds of signals, some through different senses, whatever. And in your mind, you use things that you know from the past. You know what a triangle looks like, you know what a circle looks like, you know what a square looks like. You remember that one time you were little and you touched the stove and you got like burned or whatever. You have all these experiences. You remember when you yelled at someone and then they like beat you up, or that time you got an A+ on a test and your parents were happy. All of these experiences, right, are there, but they're just little building blocks. They're like little Legos. And you need to really pay attention to the signals that are coming through in order to be able to build the actual thing that you're seeing based on these experiences. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because I think you don't need some kind of committee of scientists and health experts to prove this. It's very obvious that human beings, like any other thing, have limited bandwidth, and they have something called attention, and they can pay attention to one thing or another. And if you have a mind, right, and you're trying to make sense of something, right, that you haven't seen before, that looks kind of weird, right? Um, but at the same time, the environment is bombarding you with all kinds of other inputs. Say that this one is that you're hungry. This one is a really loud bang, right? This one is um, the news. Things are scary. It's bad. The world is terrible. Someone murdered someone in a village. All people, therefore, are killers and bad. Um, this is like what you need to buy that you really maybe even don't need, but should have, like a better car or whatever. This is like all the advertising. And you have all these like signals, right? And this thing is just in your environment and it's emitting this slow signal and it's there. But you in a way you can't notice it. You can't build up your perception of it because every time you try, suppose it's like a really complicated thing, right? With many different facets and characteristics. Um, you're just managing to do some building, and oh, you got to pay attention to this thing, and this process of being cognizant of your surroundings, um, I don't think it happens by force. I think it happens subconsciously. As you um, look and experience things, you end up building a picture within you. And the problem is that sometimes this particular thing, might be of paramount importance. This might be like, uh, the path to nirvana, right? But you can't, and it's right there and it's in front of you and it's slowly sending these signals all the time, but you're just overwhelmed by all these other things that are coming at you, right? And then you say, okay, well, just shut these things off, right? And yeah, that's totally good. Or be very good about not, like don't watch TV, don't think about like things you don't have, like, control these parts of your personality. You can even learn to be okay with being slightly hungry, not to the point of like starvation and death, but, if you miss a meal or two, it's not, you can push that away from top of mind. If you're cold, and pay attention to the things that can get you to some place better. Or maybe this nirvana in this case is like how to find a good job, or the job that makes you happy, the thing that you really want to do, because it exists and the signs are all there in the little things, but you just need to pay attention and you need to form this thing, and then once you do, it's just a matter of whether you have the courage and the strength to execute. And I think maybe a lot of people might. But and all of the self help books deal with how you can control these things, how you need to discipline yourself, how it's all because of you that you can't have the environment to notice this. But I beg to differ. I think that society is very much to blame, and we don't give society enough credit for totally disheveling us and preventing us from achieving this nice, clear vision of the things that matter in our lives. And as an example, you could learn how to master all these things. But if you don't make enough money, if you just make an average amount of money, you afford to live in some place and you trust that this place that you're paying an arm and a leg for, and you're basically wasting all your life going to work, and your work requires you to not be paying attention to these interesting things that you probably want to find out. It's like this gem that's there in the corner of your vision and you want to see what it is, but you can't because you actually have to turn the other way and you have to look at a screen, and like do work on it that totally occupies your mind, and that's the only thing you're thinking of. And then you get home and you're like tired and you got to go to bed and you can't pay attention to this. The good news is that even even when you're going to bed, the mind is like putting things together and paying attention to things. And it's thinking like, okay, we have half of this thing here and half of this thing here, and maybe that's the thing I kind of saw out of the corner of my eye. It puts stuff together. But even in your sleep and in so many different things, it's hard to just have peace, and increasingly harder. And that's why I think it's a shame that every time someone speaks about something like infrared radiation or pollution, they get labeled as like some crazy extreme activist or something like that. I don't think it's an activist to say that having a highway, right, that cars move at like an average speed of 80 miles per hour on it in both ways. And this highway, say, supplies some big metropolitan city like New York, Boston. I'm from the East Coast, okay? Leave me alone. Um, and then because again, you don't make that much money, you can afford to live in some kind of housing, which is nice housing, and many people would love to live there. But this apartment building is built like right on the highway. And at night, between the hours of midnight and like 6 a.m., there's all kinds of laws about noise ordinance, but there's no law for highway noise. And highway noise is actually extremely loud because the tires that the cars drive on are meant to weather, especially in Boston. They're usually all weather tires. And in the compound, they put more and more plastic, which makes more noise. Also, the cars, there's all kinds of, a lot of the traffic is trucks, especially in the middle of the night, there's like almost no uh, dynamics to them. Nobody cares about this. Everyone cares about, for instance, polluting the air they breathe, but no one cares about, which is important, but no one cares about noise and noise levels. And when you have, for even kids here who are trying to make sense early on of even things simple like triangles, and they're trying to sleep, and you also have adults that are trying to make sense of like what is the right path for them in their lives, or they're trying to figure out what is evil about society and not do it and not propagate it onto their children. They can't figure this stuff out because well, a lot of people don't look for it, but b, even if they don't look for it, the mind is very good at finding these patterns, but not when it's constantly bombarded by noise. And then they sell, noise canceling earphones, but that just prevents you from hearing the noise. Your body still feels the noise. And even if you can totally put the noise out of your mind, um, that noise is still a signal. And we do very little to control noise at all. For instance, in the town which I live in, which is a suburb of Boston, there is constantly, people need their lawns to be absolutely clean. So even if there's like one leaf that's fallen, people with leaf blowers come, and these are like paid. It's not the homeowner, and these leaf blowers are the loudest things you've ever heard. And it would be fine if it's like during leaf season or something, but it's all year round, all the time, on weekends, and you never have this like peaceful time. And in our society, things like this, like for instance, why don't we ban leaf blowers? Why don't doesn't everyone who employs these people have to pay for raking? It might cost a little more, but then if you can't afford a team of people to come and rake your house, then maybe you should rake it yourself and you'll get healthy also. But we have these things in society which are not they're not driven by wealth. They're not driven by capitalism, and it's pretty obvious that they're not, because without them, even if you pass a law that bans leaf blowers, um, landscaping and keeping and lawn work won't become obsolete. It won't make any less money. The market won't contract. None of that stuff will happen. But yet we don't care about laws like this. And it's very interesting to me why we don't. Do we like not care about each other? Do we not care about, um, like having this kind of peace and quiet to like put things together in our minds? So it's very interesting, this, uh, to me. And even I think even people who go on about radio um, frequency pollution, I think they have a point as well, because um, frequency um, is a thing because it carries signal and our devices can read it. But just because it isn't something that we can consciously feel, doesn't mean it's something that we can't feel on a some kind of a subconscious level that makes us just more dull, that dulls our ability to um, just be at peace and figure things out. Because actively having your subconscious work to eliminate noise is a tiring process. And I hope that we can, if anything, I hope that we can start to think more and more about quelling that raging sea within us and making it kind of like a nice pure lake, so that when something comes, like a little drop of water, and makes ripples, we feel that. And perhaps if we were more sensitive as a species, we would conduct our lives a little better, and we would have more respect for one another and more respect for the planet, um, and for our environment. But maybe I'm wrong about all of this, and maybe in the grand scheme of things, we're just these like cockroaches that are just striving to survive on this planet because they don't have much time for one reason or another. Um, and that's supposed to be Latin America. And Latin America is actually the other way. It's the little tail end is on this side. It's like that. Because that's supposed to be the US, and Canada, North America. Because that definitely doesn't look like Europe. It would have to have GB over here, and you get the picture. Anyway, it's late. I'm tired. Um, yeah, maybe we're just trying to survive and as quick as possible vamoose and get out of here. But to go where? And when you go someplace, is it a matter of going in your physical self? Is that what space travel is all about? I don't know. Or is space travel something else? To be continued.